I suppose in response to the budget yesterday, and specifically focusing on my own brief, which is the housing brief, I listened with interest to Minister Murphy's 5 or 6 minutes there, and I suppose it strikes me of the famous phrase, when you're explaining, you're losing. The reality of it is actually that we do have the lowest home ownership rates now in Ireland for over 50 years. We have the highest homelessness rates in Ireland for over 50 years, the highest rents in Ireland ever, where the average in this city is £2,024 a month, and the highest housing waiting list we've had ever as well. And that's the context in which this budget was framed. And when I suppose you look at the overall vote of £2.6 billion, the vote itself is significant. It's significant in the sense of the additional capital funding for public housing and for social housing. But the big issue has been implementation. And it's actually implementation and delivery of houses quicker and faster to meet the needs that are there. Last year, in last year's budget, my party and I negotiated lifting the discretionary cap on social housing to €6 million, which would enable local authorities to build homes quicker, and would effectively mean that in Cork or Galway or Donegal or Dublin or Meath, where local authorities would be able to procure and put their own housing estates out to tender of up to the value of €6 million, which effectively means housing estates of 40 to 50 homes. Instead of that, it remained at €2 million, which meant everything above a €2 million went through a 14-month process with the Customs House and delayed that delivery. That was something we agreed last year, and Minister Murphy reneged on it, and the Fine Gael government reneged on it. They acted in bad faith and they didn't implement it. And we went back at that again this year, and that has again been agreed, that that will be the case, that local authorities again will have the autonomy to go and build medium-sized housing estates that they're well able to do. They will be subject to audit by the Department of Housing, Planning and Local Government, and that will actually speed up the delivery of social homes all across this country. Now, it may take a change of government to actually implement that change in policy, and that's something that I earnestly do hope happens in the coming months, because this is a Brexit budget, and have no doubt, and both ministers that are there I'm sure do know this, is that the only reason we're doing this budget is because of the Brexit situation. This is not a normal budget, and whereas others on the far left and in Sinn Féin have tried to frame all other things around this budget, the reality of it is it was to provide stability for this country whilst we entered into a really important and crucial stage of negotiations with the European Union, with the UK, to try to ensure that we protect our country as best as possible against the effects of a no-deal Brexit. And we have put the national interest first in that regard, in working as a collective to try to ensure that our jobs and our economy and people's livelihoods that are dependent on the trading relationship between Ireland and Britain and the seamless nature of our membership of the European Union, that over the coming months that we protect that. And that's why that we've facilitated and will continue to facilitate the passage of this budget through legislation with the Finance Bill and the Social Welfare Bill. But we've been upfront and honest with people. What I do want to see as part of this, though, is I do want to see in the last few short months that this government has, is actually implementation of some of the decisions that have been taken. I want to see the actual establishment of an affordable purchase scheme for first-time buyers. Now, we negotiated £310 million last year. The 4 Dublin local authorities have adopted that scheme. The scheme is there, but we need to get on with the criteria. We need to actually give people a hope that they can own their own home, that they can purchase their own home, because my party believes in home ownership. Unlike others, there are parties in this House who don't believe in home ownership, who want a state-run housing system. Public housing is a part of the solution and is something that I certainly support. But I also support, and my party supports, home ownership, that it is an honest and just aspiration that people would have to be able to aspire to own their own home. And it is the most secure method of security of tenure that anyone can have in owning their own home. So we want to see the establishment of that scheme. I want to see that move on with the criteria set down. Also, in relation to the affordable rental scheme, a pilot was announced in 2015, and we've only broken ground now. And I think that's one example, if another example is needed, of how delayed a response to government announcements are in actual implementation on the ground. The delivery of homes through our approved housing bodies. Still, government has not grappled with the fact that our approved housing bodies remain on balance sheet. And whilst that this year will not be a problem, as more and more is invested through the approved housing bodies, it will affect how we deliver homes in those areas. So government needs to redouble its efforts and actually see good the commitment that it made to work with the approved housing bodies to get those AHBs off balance sheet. And they haven't been doing it, and they've been paying lip service to it. Minister Murphy, in his very short remarks here this evening, also alluded to the Land Development Agency and the fact that €17 million had been allocated to the Land Development Agency. I'd remind members and colleagues that the LDA was announced over a year ago, actually in March, April last year, and we still don't have legislation. We've heads of bill that came to committee last week. No land has been transferred to the Land Development Agency whatsoever, because they are not set up fully on a statutory basis. They are set up by ministerial order, but there is no primary legislation underpinning that funding, and it only came to the Housing Committee last week. So I think that's another example of big announcements and lack of delivery. I do want to ask, I know the Minister, I'm sure his officials will be, or I would assume his officials will be listening, in relation to the pyrite remediation scheme and the whole issue of mica that many members, including my colleague Charlie McConnell here, has raised. I'm pleased to see the mica scheme. Actually, I think it makes sense that mica be brought into the pyrite remediation scheme. I'd have a concern about the level of funding that's actually allocated into next year, and I think that we will need to look, as both of those schemes move forward, additional funding to be made, particularly when we start to tackle the issue of mica in Donegal and in Sligo. And I would actually put on record again my support for the expansion of the pyrite remediation scheme to cover homes whose the damage rating does not reach category 2, whereby the houses cannot actually get in and get their houses remediated. Those people are stuck in limbo. I know Minister McEntee will be aware of some of them also, that basically cannot move on further because they cannot get a green cert, they cannot get recertified, and it's still an issue there. But I welcome the fact that the pyrite remediation scheme is still in place, that it will be added with mica, that we can look at adding to it, and trying to assist those hundreds of families all across the country whose houses need detailed remediation and really need to be given a fresh start themselves. Just in relation to the provision of housing supports, Minister Murphy mentioned again that the allocation of, I think, an additional €135 million for next year to meet the obligations that the state has under the housing assistance payments. And whilst he has said again that no one has come up with another solution or a viable alternative to HAP, that is actually true. But HAP is very expensive and it's a short-term fix. And the long-term solution is actually to build proper homes for those families who are actually living on a day-to-day basis on 12-month leases in the private rented sector. 21% of all people living in this country and of families now are living in private rented accommodation. The vast bulk of them in short-term leases, 12-month renewable leases. And the over-reliance that Rebuilding Ireland has actually has on housing families through housing assistance payments is something that really has to be tackled. Over two-thirds of all those deemed housed last year under Rebuilding Ireland were deemed housed through the housing assistance payments, which should be a short-term fix, not a long-term solution. We need to look at building more social homes through measures that Fianna Fáil have proposed, as I said, like the lifting of the discretionary cap. We need the establishment of the affordable housing purchase scheme, affordable rent scheme, which have been previously agreed. And I do welcome, the fact that the Minister has at long last come around to our view that the Help to Buy grant was needed to be kept for the next 2 years. We fought tooth and nail to ensure that remained, because it gave some hope for people who are wishing to buy, some assistance towards their deposits to be able to get on the housing ladder. And in the absence of the affordable purchase scheme actually being up and running and open for applications, the Help to Buy grant needed to be maintained. Yes, it's expensive, but it is a direct assistance to over 15,000 people now who it has been used to help to buy their own home and to get their foot on the property ladder, to set down their roots in their own home, secure housing for families, and that's what we certainly in Fianna Fáil would see. And through the course of the budget debates, I did find it particularly interesting that, for once, that Sinn Féin in particular said they don't support the Help to Buy grants. They never supported it. Far Left never supported it. And this again shows me very clearly that those parties in particular do not support the notion of home ownership, that people who want to get on and actually want to set down their own roots with their own homes should be actually assisted, particularly first-time buyers. Thank you.